And to our very first story, a progress report on the assessment of the NPP's election promises by policy think tank Imani Africa has scored government's 23.6% on the governance, corruption and public accountability. The report found that while two key promises, that is the establishment of the Office of the Special Prosecutor and the passage of the RTI bill, have been fulfilled, corruption perception of state agencies is still very high. Research consultant at Imani Africa, Dennis Asari, during the presentation of some of the findings, revealed a huge number of promises, as such as ensuring the strict enforcement of the Public Procurement Act to cut out corruption, plus the establishment of a corruption reporting website have not been achieved.
That had saddled the S1 government. Now, they promised to establish the Office of the Special Prosecutor, ensure the passage of the Right to Information Bill. In all the two things, you realize that they were able to implement these two laws, the Office of the Special Prosecutor and the Right to Information Bill. However, despite the progress they made in these areas, we realize that our rating in terms of perception of corruption in governance have increased from 65%. Now we are around 78. We are ranked at 78th country with a high corruption perception index. Now, under the area of local government, the NPP promised that they were going to also review the staffing inventory of the local government sector, reduce cost on salaries around the local government sector. Now they were able to review it, and the cleanup of the staffing inventory, reduce cost and also salary allocation. If you follow the budget from 2017 straight down to the current 2020, realize that costs allocated for staffing around local government have one way or the other reduced compared to the previous budgets. Now, they are also, the areas that they have failed, or let's say they are yet to implement, that they were unable to bring back the People's Assembly. Remember that in the President Kufuor's administration, he had something called the People's Assembly, where he engaged citizens. Citizens had the opportunity to also contribute to policy decisions. Now, the NPP promised to bring back the People's Assembly, but they were unable, or they are yet to bring back the People's Assembly. Now, they also promised to undertake legal reforms on asset declaration. We all know that currently asset declaration issues are more of a problem now. They have not been able to implement fully where you submit your asset declaration to the Auditor General, the AG reviews it, and also keep an inventory of all the assets of politicians or government officials, so that after you coming into power, if we see an increase in your, let's say, income or some sharp increase in your earnings, then we can try and look at, based on your assets and what you declare, if you under-declared, then we surcharge you or apply the law. They were unable to also apply the asset declaration process to the till. Now, they also they were unable, or they are yet to ensure that the Public Procurement Act is applied to the latter. The government promised that they were going to ensure strict compliance to the Public Procurement Act and avoid the constant use of the sole sourcing. But we all remember the corruption scandals that have plagued the Public Procurement Authority, and this is an indication that the government was unable to apply it, or they were unable to develop systems that checked procurement processes or that ensured that the Procurement Act was applied to the latter. Also, they promised that they were going to establish a corruption reporting website. You know, this under the Whistleblower Act in 2006, that you set up a designated website where we report on corruption. But this has not been done since 2006. The NPP promised that they were going to bring it back, but they have not been able to do that.
Overall, however, the policy think tank found that out of the 510 promises made by the NPP, only about 120 have been achieved, representing 48.78%. Patrick Stevenson is head of policy research at Imani Africa. He's been speaking to us about what these calls actually mean.
Well, so it means a number of things. That over the last 3 years, if you look at the litany of things that this government committed to doing prior to being elected, you know, with that landslide victory in 2016, there's still a long way to go. If you look at what is left as against the time period that we have for the tenure of the Nana Dankwa Akufo-Addo government to come to close. However, I think there are nuances to what the score means. Out of the 48.78%, there's a portion of that, which is about 27%, that relates to promises that have been completely undertaken. So those are promises that You know, for example, if it says we're going to set up the Office of Special Prosecutor, for instance, that office exists now. The complexities regarding that office's work, you know, whether they've been able to deliver on their mandate or not, is a completely different conversation. I think we didn't aim to go into, you know, those sorts of qualitative assessments of the quality of the investments or the quality of the delivery of promises. So that nuance has got to be established. What it means is that then out of the 510 promises, there's only about 150 that the government has not touched at all. I mean, again, you can understand that. There's a 4-year term, the 4 years are not over, so definitely there are going to be areas that they wouldn't touch. So those that are in excess of 300, there's a portion of that they have touched one way or the other. And so in those cases, what we try to do is to gauge the actions that have been undertaken on these promises and measure the extent to which these commitments can lead to the realization of the promises. So some of them are on the lower bounds of, say, 0.1, 0.2, others on the higher bounds of, say, 0.9 or 0.8. And we have adjusted those ones to a full completion state. And that's what adds up to the fully completed one and pushes up to about 48%. So again, if they are able to complete those and you weigh them against, you know, the same method, clearly the numbers will change. So it all depends on what they are able to do within the next 12 months, as far as the commitments or the promises are concerned. And I'm sure maybe they are in a good foot. They are en route to probably doing something tremendous. We don't know. We can't tell yet. It's a long way out.
And during the presentation, I heard the consultant speak about corruption. I mean, it's scored just about 23+%. Right. And he mentions that even though these Office of a Special Prosecutor and etc. have been set up, there's still the perception of corruption in public offices, etc. that is still high. I mean, what will this rating at 23+%, what should it tell government?
Right. I think it's a very good question because for a country that has for a very long time struggled to deal with corruption, when a political party in opposition makes bold commitments that they want to effectively deal with corruption, you would want to see them follow through. I think what is worrying is the score which you talk about, which is that, I mean, 3/4 into the tenure of the government, what we have seen is just something below a quarter of the ultimate performance or the number of promises they made. I think the challenge there is that some of the structural things they talked about in the fight against corruption are the items that I would want to say they failed on. I mean, they haven't been able to execute on them yet, because you still have a government that's still in office for the next 12 months. Things like, you know, compelling public officers or ensuring that they put in place the right strategies that get public officers to publicly declare their assets, for example, is one. And that is at the heart of our fight against corruption. If we don't know how much people come into public office with, it's very difficult to find out if they're able to use our own laws to extort from us, whether it's through bribery, corruption, whatever it is. So that's one. The other part as well is the commitment to ensure the complete implementation of the procurement laws of the country. And somehow we set up a ministry responsible for procurement. They said they were going to do that, they set that up. So again, you're going to give them props on that. But when they say that they are going to ensure the implementation of that law to the letter, so that, and that's the caveat, so that we don't see the procurement breaches that occur over time, then they give you, the analyst, some room to be able to go beyond just saying that, you know, they are going to implement the law, to find out if there have been any incidents of breaches of procurement law. And there's a litany of those, right? Some of which go all the way to the Office of the Presidency himself, where he has to step in to get people fired. That is what, in our opinion, has set the people of the country against the government, to suggest that, well, you may have done certain things, but the perception of corruption, if people see that, you know, we're still struggling to deal with the likes of Opuni, we are still seeing people breaching laws, you know, from ministerial committees that are supposed to be dealing with Galamsey. We see all of these things from all the contracts that we have even gone on from an Imani point of view to review. Clearly, it leaves a lot more to be desired.
Expect some more analysis on that particular story that's just coming in today, later on JoyNews Prime and also on PM Express.